In the previous video, we have seen what is a chemical equation, how do we write a chemical equation, what are the basic components, and how to balance a chemical equation. Let's do a little more practice about for balancing these different chemical equations, and the question is in front of you. Let's give it a read. Sodium reacts with chlorine gas to produce sodium chloride. Write down a balanced chemical equation for this reaction. Let's try to write down the word equation first. What does it say? It says sodium, it reacts with chlorine gas to produce what? To produce sodium chloride. Alright, so now this is the word equation. Let's try to write down its chemical equation from this. Sodium, it's Na. Chlorine gas, because it's a gas, it's a diatomic molecule. We know that it is a halogen group 7. It exists in diatomic form. And it gives us what? It gives us sodium chloride. And let's add state symbols. I'll just add state symbols right away. I won't wait for the equation to be solved, to be balanced, and then write down at the end. I just like to write down at the start. So sodium, it's a metal, it's solid. Chlorine, it's a gas, obviously. Sodium chloride, it's an ionic compound, and all ionic compounds are solids at room temperature. Now we have our equation. Let's try to balance this out. I'll write down the elements that we have, and then this is the product reactant side, and this is the product side. All right, let's see what we can do over here. On the reactant side, we have one sodium. I'll write it down over here. And we have one sodium on the product side. It is balanced. Sodium is already balanced, it's equal. Whereas we have two chlorine atoms. Alright, we have two chlorine atoms on the reactant side, and we have only one chlorine atom on the product side. Now this needs to be treated. How do we do that? We'll simply multiply this by 2 so that it is equal to 2, and it will become equal. 2 on the product side, 2 on the reactant sides. Chlorine will balanced. So because we have multiplied it by 2, we'll add a 2 over here. Alright, now the chlorines are balanced, but the problem is this 2 is also with sodium. It is also multiplied over here because it has also impacted sodiums on the product side. We have a total of 2 sodiums on the product side now. So what do? We need to change the number of sodiums on the reactant side as well. How do we do that? Same. Multiply this by 2 as well. Now because you have multiplied this by 2, you need to add this 2 over here. Alright. I hope it is making sense. If you rewrite this equation now, so it has become 2Na plus Cl2 and gives us 2NaCl. It is solid, it is gaseous, it is solid. Let's count them all now. 2 sodiums, 2 chlorines, 2 sodiums, 2 chlorines. Everything is balanced. So this is how you solve a chemical equation. You can also do this without making this table. You can, it is very intuitive process. You can do this all in your mind as well. Let me show you how. Sodium plus Cl2, it gives NaCl. This is the equation that you had. Alright, now we have one sodium here, one sodium here. Balanced, move on. 2 chlorines, 1 chlorine. So what do? Because you cannot add anything over here, you need to add this 2 over here to make 2 chlorines. Now because this 2 is added with both sodium and chlorine, so you have 2 sodiums. So you need to make 2 sodiums on the reactant side as well. This is what you do. You add a 2 over here as well, and the equation is balanced. 2 sodiums, 2 chlorines, 2 sodiums, 2 chlorines. You do not need to draw this whole table every time. You can do this in your mind intuitively as well. Let's move on. Here's another question. During respiration, glucose reacts with oxygen to give carbon dioxide and water. Right? It's balanced chemical equation. I would like to write down its word equation first so that you understand and you know or you learn how to understand the question, how to interpret the question. Glucose plus oxygen gives carbon dioxide and water. Alright, so this is the word equation. Now we can write down its chemical equation. 6O plus O2, it gives CO2 and H2O. Let's try to do this without drawing the table. Alright, it should not be very difficult. A little practice is all that is required. 6 carbons, 1 carbon. Multiply this by 6. Carbons are balanced. 6 carbons, 6 carbons. But this has also changed the number of oxygens, remember that. Alright, so 6 plus 2. Alright, let's do the hydrogens first. Sorry, I missed hydrogens. We have 12 hydrogens and we have 2 hydrogens. What do you do? Multiply this by 6. 12 hydrogens, 12 hydrogens. Hydrogens are balanced now. 6 oxygens, 2 oxygens. 6 plus 2 equals 8 oxygens. And what do you have here? You have 6 times 2. 12 plus 6 times 1. Right? You have equals 6. You have 12 plus 6, 18 oxygens over here. And you have 8 oxygens over here. You need 10 more oxygens. How do you do that? You have 6, let me just write it. You have 6 plus 2 equals 8. What if you multiply this by 2, these number of oxygens by 2, you'll have 6 plus 12 equals 18, and that is what you require over here. Alright, which means that if you've multiplied this by 6, you need to add this 6 over here. Alright, if you multiply this oxygen molecule by 6, you'll have 6 plus 6 times 2 is 12. 6 plus 12 is 18 and 18. That is how you do it. Alright, not very difficult. Just a little understanding, a little interpretation of the whole equation is required. Do not worry, I've given you enough questions to practice. I've given you a worksheet to solve. If you do this nicely, if you practice it, you'll be fine by balancing these equations. Let's do one more example. Zinc reacts with sulfuric acid to form gas and zinc sulfate. One zinc, balanced. Two hydrogens, balanced. One sulfatine, balanced. Everything is balanced. If you do not want to do the sulfatine collectively, you can also break it into different atoms. One sulfur, one sulfur. Four hydrogens, four hydrogens. This equation is already balanced. Alright, no big deal. Move on. So sodium carbonate reacts with dilute hydrochloric acid. Now sodium carbonate is a metal carbonate. Alright. It reacts with dilute hydrochloric acid. It reacts with acid to give carbon dioxide and solution of sodium chloride. I've written this equation over here so that you understand what is a reaction between a metal carbonate and an acid. If you try to recall, then metal carbonates react with acids to give salt, carbon dioxide and water. So you must know that this equation, it must be written in this form. So let's try to write what is happening. Sodium carbonate Na2CO3, it reacts with dilute acid HCl and it gives off a salt which is sodium carbonate. Oh, sorry, it's sodium chloride, a salt sodium chloride. Alright, sodium carbonate and HCl, they react to give sodium chloride and carbon dioxide. Alright, carbon dioxide and water is not mentioned over here in the question. So, but you must know that when a metal carbonate and acid react, water is produced. Alright, I'll just remove these lines which are taking too much space right now. Hang on a minute. Yeah, it's fine now. Okay, so this is the equation. We have quite a number of elements over here. So let's just do it one by one. We have two sodium, we have one sodium. You must know what to do. Just add a 2 over here. Alright, so sodiums are balanced. Let's move on. Let's move on to carbons. We have one carbon over here and we have one carbon over here. Two. We have three oxygens over here and we have 2 plus 1. Three oxygens over here. Number of oxygens is also balanced. Alright. So let's move on to hydrogens. We have one hydrogen and we have two hydrogens over here. So what do? Simply multiply this by 2. So that you have two hydrogens now. Number of hydrogens is also balanced. Now you have two chlorines and you have two chlorines. That's it. The equation is balanced. I hope it was very simple. I hope you're getting the point. Let's move on. We have C3H8 plus O2 and it gives us CO2 plus H2O. Let's start with carbons. We have three carbons, we have one carbon. What do? Add a 3 over here, multiply CO2 by 3. Okay, so you have 8 hydrogens now and you have 2 hydrogens now. Very simple, multiply this by 4. Number of hydrogens is also balanced. You have 2 oxygens over here and you have 3 times 2 is 6 plus 4 times 1 is 4. You have 10 oxygens over here. What do? You multiply this by 5. 5 twos are 10. That's it. Your equation is balanced. Let's move on. This is the last example for now. Let's see how we can do it. We have two sodiums. We have one sodium. Just add a 2 over here. Multiply this thing by 2. You have 1 plus 1. You have 2 oxygens and you have 2 times 1 is 2 oxygens. Oxygens are also balanced. You have 2 hydrogens. You have 2 hydrogens. That's it. That's very simple. Equation is now balanced. I hope you got the point. I would suggest to do a lot of practice of this. This is just like maths. You need a lot of practice so that you expand your horizons and you know how to tackle different kind of equations and you become comfortable with it. So practice is the key. Good luck.